My friends, he is therefore well placed with his vast experience, not only in UK trade and politics, but also in international politics and trade, to talk to us about Sri Lanka and its global position. Let us put our hands together and give a very warm welcome to the son of our soil, our motherland, Nirj Deva.
Highly overdone. Mr. Chan, thank you very much for inviting me, and it's a great privilege to be able to speak to you this evening. Some of my oldest friends are in this room, and they're all giggling that they're having to come to listen to me. However, the evening, I want to position Sri Lanka's global geopolitical situation in the context of what happened during and after the war. But before I do that, I want to say this, and it may sound hugely arrogant for a British Sri Lankan to say so, but I'm going to do it. This club, of which I have now been a member for the last 30 years, saw the world create the British Empire. This portrait of the Israeli cabinet, the way they divided up the world, how the empire was created, new nations were springing up with people drawing lines on maps. India, a great Asian nation, was never a nation state. There was no such thing as India until the British created it in 1947. Even Emperor Ashoka's Bharat didn't include some of the bits of India which are now part of the Indian state. India is a British creation. And with the greatest respect to His Excellency the Bangladesh High Commissioner who is in the room, Bangladesh was a creation from 1972, 73, 1. They had a war. They had a war with Pakistan to do so. Pakistan, created in 1947, with people running pencils over maps, dividing houses right in the middle. That's an exceptional country in this region that's been a nation state for 2,500 years. It had 198 monarchs. Its history is written day by day in the Mahavansa and the Chulavansa. It had Sinhalese kings, it had Tamil kings. It had great cities. Sri Lanka was a nation state before the British, before the Dutch, before the Portuguese. It is not like India or Burma or Malaysia. They're all creations of post-Raj, post-colonial fiddling. Lots of Africa, which are in conflict, are entirely due to people drawing lines, cutting tribe from tribe. But not Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka was a unitary state for 2,500 years. In that time, as I said, it had Tamil. It had Sinhalese. She was invaded 14 times from the mainland. And 14 times, the people of Sri Lanka, all of them, Sinhalese, Tamils, whoever else was there, threw the Indians out. This is a very proud, independent little island with some affinity to royal families. It is the second oldest monarchy in the world after the Japanese monarchy. Until 1972, Sri Lanka was a monarchy of sorts from 500 BC to 1972. the Queen of England was her last monarch, with a Governor General. So when we talk about this little island, we are talking about something politically unique in the world. It was not created. It was. And what has happened is that, unfortunately, a lot of people in the West have forgotten this or don't know it. And the reason why I'm banging on about this is that to understand what we are, they must understand our history. Because if my colleagues in the European Parliament and my colleagues in the British Parliament when I was there, if they do not understand our history, they have no right, no remit to tell us how to behave in the future. It's only if they do understand that they should have a table and sit at the table and discuss what we should be doing. That's the first point I want to make. The second point I want to make is that Sri Lanka has a population of about 21 million people. Now let me ask you a simple question. Colombo is the capital city of Sri Lanka. Yes? What is the Sinhalese speaking, but what is the Sinhalese speaking population of Colombo? What percentage of Sinhalese extraction in Colombo? I'm taking guesses. 30%. 33%. Pray tell me how we have an ethnic problem if 33% of the capital city is of minorities. Who are some of the richest people in Sri Lanka? In Colombo? Sinhalese? No. Non-Sinhalese. So if you come to Colombo tomorrow, you will see Sinhalese and Tamils and Muslims and Burghers and God knows whoever else living in a multicultural, diverse, mutually rewarding society, mutually working together, helping each other to find a better future. So where did this ethnic problem come from? Any answers? I want an answer. What started the ethnic problem in 1983? What? Please help me.
British.
Huh?
British.
Sorry?
The Empire. British Empire.
British.
No.
83.
What started the LTT? Who trained them? Why were they there? And what was the purpose?
India.
Ah. Why did the Indians feel that they had to train a bunch of dispossessed, not high caste, fishermen's children from the north and train them to have guns and ammo and to blow up people? Why were the Indians doing that? Why would they want to create instability in the north of Sri Lanka? Well, I'll tell you why. Clearly we have forgotten. Actually, as Sri Lankans, we have the most extraordinary memories of forgiveness. In today's cabinet, there are people who should be tried for all sorts of crimes. Anyway, that's another story. The reason why India trained the LTT to come into the island and blow up Sri Lankan soldiers and others, and 65,000 people later, was because President Jayawardena flew Caspar Weinberger in secret to Colombo and started discussing the possibility of giving Trincomalee, the world's best natural harbor, to the Sixth Fleet, the American fleet, at the height of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. India had a special relationship with the Soviet Union at that time, and the United States had a very special relationship with Pakistan at that time. As a consequence of this, the Indians went nuts that the American Sixth Fleet in Trincomalee over their dead bodies, actually over the dead bodies of 65,000 Sri Lankans. That's why it all started. It was all about geopolitics. Unfortunately for Sri Lanka, a beautiful island, it's positioned at the epicenter of global shipping, of the access to the markets of Asia and the Pacific and Australia. And if Sri Lanka could be towed away and put next to Mauritius in the south of the Indian Ocean, it would be left in peace, like Mauritius is. But unfortunately for us, we are in the middle of the most strategic geopolitical position in the world. And everybody wants to control it for geopolitical reasons. So if any particular government in Sri Lanka puts a foot wrong and either upsets the Americans, the British, the Indians, or the Chinese, we get clobbered. And how to balance these geopolitical forces is one of the most important aspects of Sri Lanka's governance, if Sri Lanka is to be left alone to develop and get on with itself. Why did the Portuguese come 500 years ago? Why did the Dutch come? 17th century. Why did the British come? Because they liked the looks of the faces of the Sri Lankans. No. They came because of its geopolitical situation, its geography, its resources, and its ports. Now, if you forget all this, we then make great mistakes. We can't be too favorable to the West as Sri Lankans, nor too favorable to the Indians, nor to the Chinese. We need, therefore, to balance carefully our so-called non-alignment. It actually does something. It upsets everybody. But by upsetting everybody and balancing these relationships, the island has a chance to develop. Now, I'm a British politician. My British instinct would be to say Sri Lanka should be firmly aligned to the West. How long do you think that will last? Immediately, the Chinese or the Indians will say this is not right. You are in our sphere of influence. So the balancing act is one of the most important things any Sri Lankan government can do. And had J.R. Jayawardena understood this and not set in motion the Voice of America radio station and giving Trincomalee to the Sixth Fleet, none of this would have happened. There is no Chinese Navy trying to seek refuge, a port in Sri Lanka yet. Neither is there an Indian Navy, nor the United States Navy coming to ask for facilities. As long as we keep all of these people away, then Sri Lanka will be managed to be perceived as being neutral and fair. What are the attributes that we have as a country that makes the future of Sri Lanka exceptional?
Hardworking people.
Tell me. Come on. What is it that we have that our neighbors don't have? We have the oldest democracy in Asia. Universal adult franchise was granted or given or taken or seized, depending on who you talk to, in 1928. Britain received universal adult franchise in 1922. We also have a unique system of recognizing individual liberty. The reason why the British peoples, the Anglo sphere has succeeded phenomenally, whereas my other partner countries in the European Union have had to be rescued twice by either imperial dictators of Germany or fascist Germans and Italians, is because the British, the Anglo-Saxons, not the British per se, conceived a notion which no other state in Europe had conceived. And even to this day, that conception is still incubating in the European Parliament, whereas in the English-speaking world, it is a fully understood notion. That notion is that nobody, not even Her Majesty the Queen, is above the law. That notion is unique in political history. To us, it's a given. What's the big deal? No one is above the law. Oh no. In France, in other countries, the king was the law. In England, if the king broke the law, he was punished, as Charles I found, much to his horror, when he tried to tell the English and British people that he had the divine right of kings. The British people have never accepted the divine right of kings, and the royal family and everyone in this room is subject to the same law. Now, let me tell you a little anecdotal aside. I'm a member of the European Parliament. Do you know that I cannot be arrested? I'm immune from arrest. When I was in the British Parliament, I was extremely careful not to break the law because I make the law. But in the European Parliament, MEPs are immune from arrest because they're the continental model. I know you're looking at me as though you don't believe me, but it is true. Only the Parliament can remove my immunity to be charged with a crime. So the continental model is hugely different in the question of liberty and law. Louis XIV said, "I am the law." Napoleon said, "I am the law." Franco said, "I am the law." Hitler said, "I am the law." There is no British Prime Minister or King who has uttered those words for 900 years. And neither has there been anybody in the Commonwealth of Nations who have subsumed this value to say, "I am the law." Because no one is above the law under the British imbued system, which we have in Sri Lanka. That is the difference. And that is something we need to nurture and possess and treasure, because that is what guarantees our freedoms. In Sri Lanka, in Australia, in New Zealand, in South Africa, in Canada, and in the United States, where the sublime manifestation of that concept ended up in the United States Constitution. President Nixon was thrown out of office for tape recording some people's conversation. Hello? The world's most powerful man. No one is above the law. And as long as we hold to that, we have a unique system of governance that we need to treasure. The second thing that we have in Sri Lanka is a hugely literate population. We have 98% literacy among our people. They are not fools. They read, they analyze, they talk. They understand what's going on. They are not easily led, and sometimes they are very difficult. But we are a literate country. Then we have extraordinarily successful industrial upmarket garment industry. We are now exporting our people's labor to other countries and adding value at a higher level than previously. Of course, we have our traditional tea, rubbers, and coconuts and other things. We have ingress and access through the new ports and airports now being built and the road system. So if I'm asked to predict the future for Sri Lanka, as long as we protect our democratic legal structures, and as long as we protect the concept that no one is above the law, our country, this country, will prosper and survive, conditionally upon keeping everybody at bay. And it's all about perceptions. And life, as you know, is about perceptions. Let me tell you a little joke about perceptions, and then I will tell you something very serious. And then I'll stop. Once Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson went out camping. And in the middle of the night, Holmes woke up Watson and said, Watson, wake up, wake up. What do you see? So Watson said, I see the great universe. I see the constellations of stars, the God's great plan, the great bear, the wonderment of creation, and how insignificant we are, and how we must praise all this wonderful creation. And Holmes turned to Watson and said, Watson, someone has stolen our tent. Some of us wander around looking at the stars, and the others notice that someone has stolen our tent. The biggest issue facing Sri Lanka today is not the 65,000 people killed over nearly 28-year period of mass suffering when ordinary people going on buses got blown up and children going to school got blown up and so on and so on. But what happened perceptually at the end of the war. So the entire war, engineered by a foreign country, was now being judged not by what happened throughout the war, but by what happened in the last weeks of the war. That is incredible that we have allowed that perception to take hold. The second misperception is this. The LTTE took the largest hostage-taking ever in human history. They took 320,000 people hostage towards the end of the war. And if any one of these people tried to run away, they got shot in the back. A lot of them were used as human shields during the conflict. And they were hostages, entrapped by the LTTE. Now, it is the duty of an elected government to free your hostages if somebody has taken them hostage. the Israeli government thrashed into Mogadishu and released Israeli hostages taken by those terrorists. At the Olympic Village, the same thing happened and hostages were released. In the United States, hostages are released. In any hostage situation, it is the duty of the government to release your hostages. And guess what happened? Sri Lankan army conducted the most successful hostage release operation in human history. They released nearly 290,000 people from being hostages. Now, in every hostage situation, I hate these words, but I have to use them because they are now in the parlance. Collateral damage happens. Go and check your figures for what happened in Mogadishu. Go and check your figures for what happened in the Olympic rescue operation. Go and check your figures on any hostage release operation in the world that has happened in our living memory. That is collateral damage. Some people get killed when releasing hostages. The accepted international norm, and I'm not making this up, this is international law, is that if between 15 and 20% die to release 80%, that is acceptable. So let us say, I'm not saying this because I don't know the facts, let us say that 10% of the hostages suffered casualties, releasing the 290,000 people who had been held hostage. Maybe 5%. That's a remarkable achievement in any hostage rescue operation. But has anybody pointed this out? Has anybody talked about this? Has anybody praised the operation of rescuing these hostages? Oh no, we're talking about the 5%. Everybody's focused on this blasted 5%. What about the 95% who are alive today? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Nirj, for that excellent talk. I'm open to the panel. Any questions from the audience?
Going back to what you were saying about the Indian government arming the LTTE, yes, that is true, but it also goes back to post-colonial times when it's the Lankan government who came in and started forcing the country to be effectively a wholly Sinhalese country, making sure that Sinhalese was the language, making sure the Tamils were undermined. And I think that's an important point to make, and therefore, obviously, people started rising up. India then took advantage of the situation because they didn't want to be, they didn't want Sri Lanka to be a strong country, so they started destabilizing it. But I think it is important to mention that it was the Lankan government that started this whole thing.
I agree. In fact, had I had more time, I would have developed all this, but I will now that you asked this question. It is not only the Bandaranaike government, it's also my party, the United National Party, which my grandfather was one of the founder members. D.S. Senanaike outrageously made stateless all the Tamil plantation workers and took away their civic rights, so they couldn't vote. I found this out a couple of years ago, and I went around poking around, trying to find out how and why an elected government under the rule of law would suddenly make all these people stateless and also take their civic rights so that they couldn't vote. And I was told that it was done because the Americans had whispered in the ears of D.S. Senanaike and John Kothalaga that these Tamil workers had been unduly influenced by Peter Kenneman and the communists, and this is at the height of the Cold War, and that they will all vote communist, and Sri Lanka will become a communist state, and so take their civic rights out, and boom, Bob's your uncle, problem solved. That's the sort of stupid leadership we've had. Not only Bandaranaike, it's also happened in the UNP. But we need to govern our country according to immutable principles. One of which is that no one is above the law. The other is that everyone has their freedoms enshrined and protected, everyone, under a constitutional arrangement that cannot be changed at the whim of whoever is in government. And third, that our democratic system requires a well-informed, cogent opposition. I'm not talking about running. That will test the theories and ideas put forward by the government of the day. That is how the system works. You take away a spark plug and a piece of kit off the machine and the engine collapses. It's a complete engine. It needs all these things to make it work with the independent judiciary. And we have to protect these safeguards. And that is why Bandaranaike doing what he did, which is outrageous, or the Essananaike doing what he did, which is outrageous, are politics of the immediate, which have far-reaching consequences, because it creates the climate for other countries to come and interfere. Now I see a similar situation happening with the Muslims. And I think someone's got to stop it. Not the Muslims stopping it, but the anti-Muslim thing stopping it. Somebody stopping the anti-Muslim thing that is happening in Sri Lanka.
Take two more questions, I think. Any other? Yes.
Sorry, I think.
Sorry, it's Trevor. It's Trevor.
It's Trevor. I feel terrible asking questions.
Louder, please.
I'm a very new member, but I'm a member of this club and saw lots of Sri Lankans in there. And I'm also from Sri Lanka, so it's great to be here. But I don't mean to be provocative. But I was just wondering what your thoughts are on the state of democracy in Sri Lanka now, with the current regime. And I was in Sri Lanka in July and August, and visited a place called Pasipura, and was asking the locals about the hotel I was staying in, and they said, well, it was owned by the president's brother, and all sorts of land and property there were really owned by the president, his family, and friends. So interested in your thoughts about the...
If you are asking me about the state of our constitutional arrangements and our democracy in Sri Lanka, I would say this. Sri Lanka has an electoral system where there's a strange constitution that was created by J.R. Jawad, which gives the executive president extraordinary amounts of power. Now, let's not forget that there have been 14 general elections and 8 presidential elections held in Sri Lanka since independence, with no disturbances, no great killings, where governments have changed, presidents have changed, and people have been elected, or other people have left office. This is a very good record for any country other than Western countries, particularly in Asia. And that has continued. After the war, the president won a huge mandate. He has 2/3 of the parliament. Now, as you know, when Margaret Thatcher won a huge mandate in '84, Francis people said that's very dangerous. And so it proved. But the fact is that the president, on a popular mandate, won more than 2/3 of a majority in the Sri Lankan parliament. And it wasn't fixed. It was accepted as fair, free, by all the international community who saw the elections. And the opposition did very badly. And how do I know this? Because I was an advisor to the leader of the opposition. But needless to say, the president's party won. Now, more recently, he went and did something more extraordinary than winning a 2/3. He decided to hold elections in the northern province. And I went to see him. And I said, why are you doing this? Do you know that you are not going to win and the TNA, LTT-backed party is going to win? I said, yes, but we are a democracy. And we need to have elections. And this area never had elections. So I'm going to have elections, even if I'm going to lose. So I touched my head and said, right, fine. He lost. The chief minister now has what, 32? And the president's party has 4. 8. But he did it. And I thought, wow, talk about self-confidence. But he did it. He need not have done it. He could have delayed it for years and years. He could have declared states of emergency, all sorts of issues. But he did it. So I don't think that the democratic institutions are weak. Now about land purchase, I don't know. I don't know about that. I have no competence to discuss who is buying land.
Right. We'll take one more question, please. One more question.
Nirj, given your topic is on the geopolitical situation and Sri Lanka's interaction with that, how do you rate the way the current government is handling that geopolitical balancing act with China, India, the West, America, and so on?
You see, there's the other side to this coin. The government is handling the geopolitical balance of everybody trying to become involved and keeping everyone at bay. So the Chinese pour money, then the Indians pour money, then the IMF gives loans. It's okay. It's an even keel. It's balanced. It's not veering to one side or the other. Even when Manmohan Singh didn't turn up to Chogar, the president treated that with a laugh and said, tough. But the other side of the coin is that because of the perceived instability in the country, foreign direct investment isn't coming. And the tragedy of foreign direct investment is that foreign companies and multinationals want to be jolly sure that you're one of us. If you're one of us and you play our game, we'll pour money down foreign FDIs. If you're not one of us, we don't know who you are, whose side you're really batting on, and they have not understood that they are batting on the side of the Sri Lankans for 2,500-year-old unitary state. And that's the problem. That message has not got through. So either you have to be with us or we are against us. Quote Bush. Well, I don't think Sri Lanka is with anybody. And so, no FDI. And that's sad.
Well, thank you, Nirj, for this very illuminating and interesting talk on Sri Lanka and global position. We'll take a short break. I'm sure there are some shorties and so on, and then we will show a film for the last phase. Thank you.
Thank you.